The distress beacon had been calling for 3 days before anyone found it. Hana stood at the observation window of the research vessel Horizon's Edge, watching the wreckage drift through space like broken bones. The freighter had been torn apart by something powerful. Blast marks covered what remained of the hull. Cargo containers floated in the darkness, spilling their contents into the void. "Survivors?" Captain asked from his command chair. Physician clicked his mandibles, his insect-like eyes scanning the sensor readings. No life signs from the main vessel. However, there is something unusual. One cargo hold remains sealed. Internal atmosphere is still intact. And there is a heat signature. Hana felt her heart beat faster. She was a scientist who studied alien life forms. For 3 years she had served aboard this ship, documenting creatures from dozens of worlds. But she had never seen anything like this wreckage. There were traders, mostly legal, sometimes not. Whatever they had been carrying, someone had wanted it badly enough to destroy an entire ship. "I am taking a shuttle," Hana said. Captain turned to look at her. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and tired eyes. He had seen too much in his years of service. "We do not know what is in there." "That is exactly why I need to go." The captain studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Take Ho with you, and be careful." The shuttle crossed the distance in minutes. Navigator Ho was a skilled pilot, guiding them through the floating debris with smooth, practiced movements. He was younger than Hana, with quick hands and a quicker tongue. "This feels wrong," he said as they approached the sealed cargo hold. "They do not carry passengers, so what is alive in there?" Hana did not answer. She was already pulling on her environmental suit, checking the seals, preparing for whatever waited inside. They docked with the cargo hold through an emergency airlock. The metal groaned as the seals connected. Hana stepped through first, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The hold was cold. Ice crystals had formed on the walls. Emergency lights blinked red in the corners, casting strange shadows across the floor. And in the center of the room, Hana saw it. A cage. It was made of thick metal bars, reinforced with energy fields that flickered weakly. Inside the cage, pressed into the far corner, was a creature. Hana stopped breathing. She recognized the species immediately. Every spacer knew them. Every child grew up hearing stories about them. There were apex predators, hunters that had dominated 12-star systems before the Galactic Union convinced them to join civilization. Adults stood 7 feet tall, with blade-like limbs that could cut through ship armor. Their silver eyes could see in complete darkness. Their instincts were hardwired for killing. But this was not an adult. This was a cub. It was small, barely 3 feet tall, curled into a tight ball of dark fur and trembling limbs. Its silver eyes were open, watching Hana with a mixture of fear and exhaustion. It looked young, perhaps equivalent to a human toddler, and it looked like it was dying. "By the stars," Ho whispered behind her. "They were smuggling a youngling. Do you know what this means, if they find out their child was taken?" "War," Hana said quietly. "It means war." She approached the cage slowly, keeping her movements calm and predictable. The cub hissed at her, a weak sound that had no strength behind it. Up close, she could see how thin it was. Its ribs showed through its fur. Its eyes were dull, lacking the predator shine she had seen in research videos. "How long has it been here?" she asked. Ho checked the ship's records on his data pad. The freighter was attacked 6 days ago, but looking at the cage systems, the cub has not eaten in at least 8 days, maybe longer. 8 days, for a growing predator cub, that was a death sentence. Hana opened the cage. "What are you doing?" Ho grabbed her arm. "That thing will kill you." "Look at it," Hana said softly. "Does it look like it can kill anyone?" The cub watched her with those silver eyes, not moving, not attacking. It just watched like it was waiting for something. Hana had seen that look before. She had seen it in rescue animals back on Earth, creatures so traumatized they had forgotten how to trust. She knelt at the entrance of the cage and extended her hand, palm up, showing she meant no harm. The cub pressed itself harder into the corner. "It is okay," Hana whispered. "I am not going to hurt you." They brought the cub back to the horizon's edge. Physician examined it in the medical bay, his instruments clicking and whirring as he worked. The crew gathered outside, watching through the windows with a mixture of curiosity and fear. Severe malnutrition reported, dehydration, signs of psychological trauma. "The cub is dying, Captain. Without food, it has perhaps 4 or 5 days remaining." Captain crossed his arms, "Then feed it." "We have tried. We have offered raw meat, synthetic proteins, nutrient solutions. The cub refuses everything. It will not eat." Hana watched the cub through the window. It had been placed in a sealed observation room, surrounded by food it would not touch. It sat in the corner, just as it had in the cage, watching the door with those tired silver eyes. "Galactic law requires us to return it to space," Captain said. "But that journey takes 3 weeks, if it will not eat." "Then it dies before we get there," Ho finished. "And when they learn we let their child die on our ship, they will not ask questions. They will simply destroy us." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the situation. They were trapped between an impossible rescue and certain death. Hana stepped forward. "Let me try." Every head turned to look at her. "You," Ho raised an eyebrow. "What are you going to do that the medical systems cannot?" "I do not know yet," Hana admitted. "But I know that creature is scared. It is alone. It watched its captors die and spent 6 days surrounded by death. Maybe it needs more than just food. Maybe it needs someone to show it that eating is safe again." Captain studied her for a long moment. "You understand the risk. If that cub attacks you, we cannot guarantee your safety." Hana nodded. "I understand." "Then you have my permission. But Hana," the captain's voice softened, "be careful. That thing is still a predator, no matter how small it looks." Hana walked to the observation room door. She picked up a tray of raw meat from the food station. Through the small window, she could see the cub watching her approach. She took a deep breath and opened the door. The cub hissed, pressing itself into the corner, its silver eyes tracking her every movement. Hana stepped inside and let the door close behind her. She was alone now, locked in a room with a creature whose species was famous for killing. She sat down on the floor, placed the tray between them and waited. The cub did not move. It just watched her with those exhausted, frightened eyes. "It is okay," Hana said softly. "I am not leaving. We have all the time in the world." Outside, the crew watched in silence. No one knew what would happen next, but somehow, watching the small human woman sit patiently before the deadly predator cub, they felt something they had not expected. Hope. 72 hours passed. Hana had not left the observation room. She slept on the floor, ate her meals in the corner, and spent every waking moment watching the cub. The creature had not moved from its position against the far wall. It had not touched the food. It had not made a sound except for the occasional weak hiss when Hana moved too quickly. The crew took turns watching through the observation window. They brought Hana blankets and water. They whispered among themselves, wondering how long she could last, wondering how long the cub could survive. On the second day, physician delivered his report through the intercom. "The cub's vital signs are declining, heart rate is slowing, body temperature is dropping. At this rate, it has perhaps 4 more days, maybe less." Hana looked at the cub. It was so thin now that she could count every bone beneath its dark fur. Its silver eyes had lost their shine, becoming dull and empty. It was giving up. She could see it happening, and she did not know how to stop it. "Why will you not eat?" she whispered. The cub just stared at her. On the third day, Doctor came to the observation window. He was an elderly man with white hair and kind eyes, a human anthropologist who had spent his life studying predator species across the galaxy. He watched the cub for a long time before speaking. "I think I understand the problem," he said through the intercom. Hana looked up. "Tell me." "They are pack hunters. Everything they do together, hunting, sleeping, playing, and eating." Doctor pressed his hand against the glass. "Cubs do not learn to eat alone. They learn by watching their pack. The mother eats first, showing the young that the food is safe. Then the cubs imitate her. It is not just about nutrition. It is about trust. It is about belonging." Hana felt something click in her mind. She looked at the cub with new eyes. It was not refusing to eat because it was not hungry. It was refusing because it did not know how. Its pack was gone. Its mother was gone. No one had shown it that eating was safe. It was waiting for permission that would never come. "The cub was taken from its family," Hana said slowly. "It was alone in that cage for over a week. It has no one to mimic, no one to teach it." Doctor nodded sadly. "And without that connection it would rather starve than eat alone. Eating without pack is unnatural, wrong, perhaps even shameful." Hana sat back against the wall thinking. She remembered her own childhood, long ago on Earth. After her mother died, she had stopped eating too. Not because she was not hungry, but because meals had always been something they shared together. Eating alone felt like betrayal. It felt like admitting her mother was really gone. Her grandmother had saved her. The old woman had not forced food into her mouth. She had not lectured or threatened. She had simply sat beside Hana and eaten her own meal, slowly and peacefully. And eventually, watching her grandmother eat, Hana had picked up her own spoon. Imitation, trust, connection. "I need another meal tray," Hana said suddenly. Ho's voice came through the intercom. "Another one. The cub has not touched the first 3. "Not for the cub, for me." There was a pause. "I do not understand." Hana stood up and walked closer to the observation window, keeping her voice low so the cub would not hear. "If cubs learn by imitation, then I need to give it something to imitate. I need to eat in front of it. I need to show it that eating is safe." Captain's voice joined the conversation. "You want to pretend to be its pack. I want to show it that it is not alone anymore." The silence stretched for a long moment, then Captain spoke again. "Bring her whatever she needs." They brought Hana a tray of food. Not the raw meat they had been offering the cub, but cooked meat, similar in texture and appearance. Hana sat down in the middle of the observation room, directly across from the cub, and placed both trays before her. The cub watched her with tired eyes. Hana picked up a piece of meat with her fingers. She remembered what Doctor had said about eating habits. They did not use tools. They tore their food with their claws and teeth. She needed to mimic that. She raised the meat to her mouth and took a big bite, chewing loudly. She made sounds of satisfaction, just like she had seen in videos of pack meals. She tore at the meat with enthusiasm, making the act of eating look like the most wonderful thing in the world. The cub did not move. Hana continued eating, taking her time, making every bite a performance. When she finished, she pushed the second tray slightly toward the cub and waited. Nothing happened. She repeated this ritual for 2 days. Every meal she ate in front of the cub. Every time she pushed food toward it. Every time the cub refused. The crew began to lose hope. Ho argued that they should consider euthanasia, a mercy killing to end the cub's suffering. Physician agreed that it might be the kindest option. Even Doctor began to doubt. "Perhaps the trauma is too deep," the old anthropologist said sadly. "Perhaps it cannot trust anything anymore." But Hana refused to give up. On the evening of the 5th day, something changed. Hana was eating her dinner, going through the same performance she had done a dozen times before. The cub was watching her as it always did with those dull silver eyes. But this time, as Hana chewed her food, the cub moved. It was a small movement, just a slight shift of its body toward the center of the room. Hana pretended not to notice. She kept eating, kept making satisfied sounds, kept showing the cub that this was safe and good. The cub moved again, inching closer. Hana's heart was racing, but she forced herself to stay calm. She took another bite, chewed slowly, swallowed. The cub crept forward, its silver eyes fixed on the food in her hands. Hana tore off a piece of meat and held it out, not toward the cub, but just in the open air, as if offering it to an invisible friend. Then she brought it to her own mouth and ate it. The cub was only 2 feet away now, close enough that Hana could see the hunger in its eyes, the desperate need warring with fear and distrust. She picked up another piece of meat and held it out again. This time, she did not eat it. She simply held it there, waiting. The cub reached out with one small, clawed hand. Hana did not move. The cub's claws touched the meat. It hesitated, looking up at Hana's face, searching for something. Permission, safety, trust. Hana took a bite of her own food, showing that she was eating too, showing that they were in this together. The cub pulled the meat closer and lifted it to its mouth. Hana chewed. The cub chewed. Hana swallowed. The cub swallowed. Outside the observation room, the entire crew had gathered at the window. No one spoke. No one breathed. They watched as the human woman and the predator cub ate together, matching each other bite for bite. Physician clicked his mandibles in disbelief. The human became its pack, he said quietly. She showed it how to eat by eating herself. She gave it something to imitate. The cub finished its small piece of meat and looked at Hana with new eyes. Something had changed in those silver depths. The dullness was fading, replaced by something brighter, something alive. Hana pushed the tray of food closer to the cub. It reached for another piece. And this time it did not wait for her to eat first. It simply ate, trusting that Hana was there, trusting that it was safe. When the meal was finished, the cub made a sound that no one on the crew had ever heard before. It was a low, rumbling vibration, deep in its chest. A purr. The cub moved closer to Hana, its earlier fear completely gone. It pressed its head against her knee and continued to purr. Hana, very slowly, placed her hand on its fur. The cub did not pull away. Through the observation window, Captain watched with tears in his eyes. He had commanded ships for 30 years. He had seen battles and miracles and everything in between, but he had never seen anything like this. A human woman, alone and unarmed, had done what no medical system could do. She had reached a dying predator not through force or technology, but through patience and kindness. She had become its pack, and in doing so, she had saved its life. The days that followed were unlike anything the crew of Horizon's Edge had ever experienced. The cub ate every meal with Hana. It would not touch food unless she was present, unless she ate first, unless they shared the ritual together. But it was eating. It was growing stronger, and slowly, carefully, it was beginning to trust. Hana named the cub. It meant star in her native language, and she thought it fit perfectly. The cub's silver eyes reminded her of distant stars, bright points of light in an ocean of darkness. When she first whispered the name, the cub had tilted its head and made a soft chirping sound. Hana decided to take that as approval. Word spread quickly through the ship. The deadly predator cub was not only alive but thriving. Crew members who had once feared even walking past the observation room now found excuses to stop by the window. They watched in amazement as followed Hana around the room, chirping when she spoke, purring when she sat nearby. On the third day after the first meal, Hana decided to try something new. "I am going to open the door," she told Captain through the intercom. "I want to take for a walk." The captain's eyebrows rose. "A walk through the ship with a cub," Hana corrected gently. "A scared, lonely cub that has been locked in cages and small rooms for too long. It needs space. It needs to explore. It needs to feel like it belongs somewhere." Captain was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed, Clear the corridors. No one approaches without Hana's permission. The door opened and froze. The cub stared at the corridor beyond, its silver eyes wide. It had spent so long in enclosed spaces that the sight of something larger seemed to frighten it. Hana knelt beside it and offered her hand. "Come with me," she said softly. "I will show you that the world is not so scary." Looked at her hand, then at her face. Then very slowly it placed its small clawed paw in her palm. They walked through the ship together. Stayed close to Hana's side, its eyes darting in every direction, taking in the lights and sounds and smells of the vessel. When they passed a crew member, the cub would press closer to Hana's leg, seeking safety. But it did not hiss. It did not attack. It simply trusted that Hana would protect it. Ho watched them pass through the navigation bay, his mouth hanging open. "I thought you were going to get killed," he said later, shaking his head. "Instead, you adopted a murder kitten." Hana laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in days. As the week continued, grew bolder. It began exploring on its own, always staying within sight of Hana, but venturing farther each day. It discovered the joy of chasing small lights across the floor. It learned that the humming of the ship's engines was not a threat. It found a favorite sleeping spot just outside Hana's quarters, curling up against the door like a guard dog waiting for its owner. The crew's fear transformed into affection. Physicians started leaving small treats for the cub near his medical bay. Doctors spent hours observing its behavior, making notes for his research. Even Captain, who had initially wanted to keep the cub contained, began stopping by to watch it play. "It is remarkable," he said one evening, standing beside Hana as chased a rolling data pad across the floor. "They are feared across the galaxy. Parents frighten their children with stories of their hunts, and yet here is one of their young, playing like any other child." Hana nodded. "Predator or not, it is still a baby. All bobbies need the same things: food, safety, love. And someone to show them the way," the captain added quietly. But not everyone was comfortable with the situation. 1 week into their journey, Ambassador arrived via a small diplomatic shuttle. She was a tall woman with sharp features and cold eyes, a professional negotiator assigned to handle the cub's return to space. She walked through the ship with the confidence of someone who was used to being obeyed. "Where is the creature?" she asked, her voice clipped and formal. "Her name is," Hana said. Ambassador raised an eyebrow. "You named it." She needed a name. The ambassador's expression did not change. "Dr. Hana, I understand you have formed some kind of bond with this animal, but I need you to understand something. In 1 week we will reach the border. A delegation of their people will be waiting to collect the cub, and when that happens, you will need to let go." Hana felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She had known this moment was coming. She had tried not to think about it. But now, watching play happily on the floor, the reality hit her hard. She was going to lose her. "I understand," Hana said quietly. Ambassador studied her for a moment and her expression softened slightly. "I know this is difficult, but you saved that creature's life. You gave it a chance to return to its people. That is something to be proud of." Hana nodded, but she could not speak. That night seemed to sense that something was wrong. Instead of sleeping outside Hana's door, the cub scratched at the metal until Na let her in, crawled onto the bed and curled up against Hana's side, purring softly. Hana wrapped her arms around the small, warm body and cried. She cried for the mother had lost. She cried for the fear and pain the cub had endured. She cried for the days ahead, when she would have to say goodbye to this creature who had become so important to her. And she cried for herself, for opening her heart to something she knew she could not keep. The next morning, Hana dried her tears and made a decision. She would not waste her remaining time with sadness. She would make every day count. She would give the cub all the love and care she could, so that when returned to her people, she would carry those memories with her. They spent the next days together constantly. Hana taught simple games. She showed the cub how to recognize different crew members. She even tried to teach her name, repeating Hana over and over until the cub made a sound that was almost close. Would chirp, and Hana would laugh and hug her. The crew joined in. Ho taught how to catch a ball. Physician let the cub watch him work, explaining medical procedures in a gentle voice even though could not understand. Doctor read stories aloud and would sit at his feet, listening with those bright silver eyes. For one brief, beautiful week, the Horizon's Edge became something more than a research vessel. It became a home. But all homes must eventually be left behind. On the morning of the 14th day, Captain's voice came over the ship's intercom. "Attention all crew, we have arrived at the border. A delegation ship is approaching. They will be docking in 1 hour." Hana looked down at, who was happily gnawing on a piece of dried meat. 1 hour. She had 1 hour left with the creature she loved. Hana picked up and held her close, feeling the warmth of her fur, listening to the soft rumble of her purr. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. "You were so brave. You survived when everything told you to give up, and now you get to go home." Chirped and nuzzled against Hana's neck. Hana closed her eyes and held on tight, trying to memorize every detail of this moment. In 1 hour she would have to let go. But for now, for these last precious minutes, was still hers. The ship was massive. It hung in space beside the horizon's edge like a predator studying its prey. Its hull was dark and angular, covered in sharp edges that seemed designed to intimidate. Weapons systems lined its sides, enough firepower to destroy a dozen vessels the size of the research ship. The crew watched through the windows in nervous silence. They had all heard stories about They knew what these creatures could do, and now 3 of them were about to board their ship. Hana stood in the docking bay with pressed against her leg. The cub could sense the tension in the air. Its silver eyes kept darting toward the airlock, and a low growl rumbled in its chest. "Easy," Hana murmured, placing her hand on its head. "It is okay, they are your people." But did not seem comforted. She pushed closer to Hana, her small claws gripping the fabric of Hana's uniform. The airlock opened with a hiss of pressurized air. 3 stepped through. Hana had seen images of adult before, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. They were enormous, each one standing over 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in dark fur that seemed to absorb the light. Their limbs ended in curved blades that looked sharp enough to cut through metal. Their eyes were silver-like, but there was nothing soft or innocent in their gaze. These were apex predators, killers, the most feared species in the known galaxy. And they were walking straight toward her. Every instinct in Hana's body screamed at her to run. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands were shaking, but she did not move. She stood her ground, one hand resting protectively on its head. The lead stopped 3 feet in front of her. It was female, Hana realized. Something about the shape of her face, the way she carried herself. She wore armor decorated with symbols that Hana did not recognize, marks of rank and honor. Her silver eyes studied Hana with an intensity that was almost painful. Then those eyes moved down too. The cub had gone completely still. She was staring at the adult with wide, frightened eyes. A small whimper escaped her throat. Hana's protective instincts flared. Without thinking, she stepped slightly in front of, putting herself between the cub and the towering predators. The lead tilted her head. The translator device on her collar crackled to life. "You shield the young one," she said. Her voice was deep and rough like stones grinding together. "From us, from her own kind." Hana lifted her chin. "She is scared. She has been through a lot." "She is. We do not feel fear." "She is a child," Hana replied firmly. "All children feel fear, even children." The 2 others shifted behind their leader, their blade limbs clicking against the floor. Hana could feel their hostility, their confusion at being challenged by such a small creature. But the lead held up one clawed hand, and they went still. She studied Hana for a long, silent moment. Then, very slowly, she lowered herself to one knee. It was not a submissive gesture. It was simply a way of bringing herself closer to eye level, reducing her intimidating height. "I am called," she said, "Hunt Leader of the Pale Moon Clan, the young one you protect. She is the daughter of the High. She was taken from us 4 cycles ago. We had believed her dead." Hana felt her breath catch. The daughter of the High was not just any cub, she was royalty. "We found her in a smuggler's ship," Hana explained. "She was starving, she would not eat." Silver eyes narrowed. "Would not eat. Young eat constantly, it is their nature." She had no one to show her how. No pack, no mother, she was alone. Something shifted in its expression. It was subtle, barely visible, but Hana saw it. Pain, understanding, grief. "She forgot how to eat," said quietly, "because there was no one to eat with." "Yes. And you showed her." Hana nodded. "I ate with her, I became her pack. I gave her something to imitate." The two behind exchanged glances. They looked confused, maybe even disturbed, but just continued to stare at Hana with those piercing silver eyes. Then she did something that made every human in the docking bay gasp. She bowed her head. It was a deep bow, the kind that reserved for moments of highest respect. Her blade limbs folded against her body, and her chin nearly touched her chest. "You saved the daughter of our leader," said, her voice rough with emotion. "You gave her back her will to live. Among my people there is no greater honor than this. You have our gratitude, human, now and forever." Hana did not know what to say. She stood there, speechless, as the most dangerous predator she had ever met showed her respect that few aliens had ever received. Captain stepped forward, his own voice shaking slightly. "Hunt Leader, we are honored to return the young one to her people, but I must ask, the child has formed a bond with our crew member. Will she be all right?" Rose to her feet and looked down at, who was still hiding behind Hana's legs. "Among the pack bonds are sacred," she said. "They are not easily broken, even by blood. This young one has chosen her pack." Her eyes moved to Hana. "She has chosen you." Hana felt tears threatening to fall. "I know she has to go with you. I know she belongs with her own people. I want to know she will be okay." Was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out with one massive clawed hand. Hana flinched, but simply rested her palm gently on Hana's shoulder. "The young one will return to her father. She will grow strong. She will learn the ways of the hunt." His voice softened. "But she will never forget you, Hana of the humans, and neither will we." Hana's heart broke and healed at the same time. Stepped back and gestured to her companions. They moved forward, approaching slowly, respectfully. The cub pressed against Hana's leg, trembling. "It is okay," Hana whispered, kneeling down to level. "They are your family, they will take care of you." Made a small, sad sound. Her silver eyes were filled with confusion and fear. She did not want to leave. She did not understand why she had to go. Hana's heart shattered, but she forced herself to smile. "I will never forget you," she said, her voice breaking. "You were so brave, you survived when no one thought you could, and now you get to go home and be with your real pack." Reached out and touched Hana's face with one small paw. Hana caught the paw and held it gently. "I love you," she whispered. "Now go and be strong." One of them stepped forward and carefully lifted into their arms. The cub chirped in protest, reaching back toward Hana with both paws. Hana stood there watching as they carried toward the airlock. At the last moment turned back. "Human," she said. "Hana, the High will want to meet you. You have done something no alien has ever done. You have become packed to a." Hana wiped the tears from her face. "What does that mean?" Silver eyes gleamed. "It means you are welcome in space. It means you have allies among the hunters. And it means..." She paused, something almost like a smile crossing her fearsome features. It means this is not goodbye. Then she turned and walked through the airlock, following the others back to their ship. The last thing Hana saw was face, those silver eyes watching her until the airlock door closed and blocked them from view. Hana stood there for a long time, staring at the sealed door, feeling the emptiness in her chest where used to be. Behind her, Captain placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did something incredible today," he said quietly. "You saved that child's life. You may have prevented a war, and you showed the galaxy that humans are capable of more than anyone knew." Hana nodded, but she could not speak. She had done all those things, but right now, all she could feel was the loss of a small, warm body pressed against her side. She missed already. 1 year later, Hana stood on the surface of an alien world. It was beautiful in a savage way. Massive forests stretched across the horizon, filled with trees taller than any building on Earth. The sky was a deep purple, lit by 2 distant suns that cast long shadows across the landing platform. The air smelled of pine and something else, something wild and untamed. Hana was the first human to ever set foot on this planet. After the events on the horizon's edge, the story had spread quickly. The human who saved the Heist's daughter, the woman who became packed to a predator. Scientists wanted to interview her. Politicians wanted to use her as a symbol. News agencies from a dozen species requested her story. But Hana had refused them all. She did not want fame. She did not want to be a symbol. She just wanted to see again. The invitation had arrived 3 months ago, delivered by a courier ship that had appeared without warning beside the horizon's edge. The message was simple. The High requested Hana's presence on his world. She was to come as an honored guest, the first of her kind to receive such an invitation. Captain had given her leave without hesitation. "Go," he said, smiling. "Go see your daughter." Now standing on the landing platform, Hana felt her heart racing. She did not know what to expect. Would remember her. The cub had been so young when they parted. Perhaps she had forgotten. Perhaps Hana was just a distant memory now, replaced by her real family. The welcoming committee approached across the platform. A dozen, each one massive and terrifying, their blade limbs gleaming in the purple light. They moved in perfect formation, soldiers and hunters, the most dangerous beings Hana had ever seen. At the front of the group walked the High himself. He was the largest Hana had ever seen. His fur was silver white with age, and scars crossed his face like a map of battles won. He moved with the grace of a predator who had never known defeat. His eyes, silver like all, burned with an intensity that made Hana want to look away. But she held her ground. She had faced predators before. The High stopped before her and looked down. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his translator crackled. "You are smaller than I expected," he said. Hana almost laughed, almost. "I get that a lot." The eyes narrowed. Then, to Hana's shock, his mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. "My daughter speaks of you often," he said. "She calls you Pack Mother. She tells the other young ones stories of the human who taught her to eat, who held her when she was afraid, who protected her from the dark." Hana's eyes stung with tears. She remembers. She has never forgotten. They stepped aside and gestured toward the group behind him. "She has been waiting for you." Hana looked past him, searching the faces of the delegation. At first, she saw only adults, massive and intimidating. But then, from behind 2 of the larger hunters, a smaller figure pushed forward. Hana's breath caught in her throat. Was nearly 5 feet tall now, no longer the tiny, starving cub that Hana had found in that ruined freighter. Her fur was thick and healthy, gleaming in the sunlight. Her blade limbs had grown, though they still looked too big for her body. She was gangly, awkward, caught in that strange space between child and adult. But her eyes were the same. Those silver eyes that had watched Hana through the bars of a cage. Those eyes that had learned to trust when there was no reason to trust. Those eyes that Hana had dreamed about every night for the past year. Stood frozen at the edge of the platform, staring at Hana with an expression that was impossible to read. Then she moved. She crossed the platform in 3 bounds, her powerful legs carrying her faster than any human could run. Hana barely had time to brace herself before crashed into her, wrapping her limbs around Hana's body and nearly knocking her to the ground. The rumbling purr that filled the air was so loud that Hana felt it in her bones. Chirped, nuzzling against Hana's neck. Hana wrapped her arms around the young and held on tight. Tears streamed down her face, but she was laughing, laughing with pure joy. "I missed you too," she whispered. "I missed you so much." The delegation watched in stunned silence. Some of them had never seen a human before. None of them had ever seen their future leader, the daughter of the High, show such open affection. But they just stood there, watching with those ancient silver eyes. And if there was a trace of tears in those eyes, no one dared to mention it. Later, after the formal greetings were complete, Hana and walked through the forests of the trees towered above them like giants, and strange creatures called from the shadows. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. Had grown, but she was still the same cub that Hana remembered. She chirped when she was excited. She pressed against Hana's side when she wanted comfort. And when Hana produced a piece of dried meat from her pocket, the same kind they had shared on that first day, eyes lit up with recognition. They sat together on a fallen log, eating in silence, sharing the ritual that had saved life. "I never stopped thinking about you," Hana said quietly. "Every day I wondered if you were okay, if you were happy." Made a soft sound, something between a chirp and a purr. She rested her head on Hana's shoulder. "You taught me," she said. Her words were slow and careful. She had been learning to speak human languages. "You taught me to eat, to live, to trust." Hana smiled through her tears. "You taught me too. You taught me that love does not care about species or size or claws. Love is just love." Nodded solemnly, "Pack." "Yes," Hana agreed, "pack." They sat together until the suns began to set, painting the purple sky in shades of gold and red. In the distance, the city glowed with lights. Somewhere in that city, diplomats were discussing treaties and alliances. Politicians were talking about the future of human relations. History was being made. But here, on this quiet log in the middle of an alien forest, 2 souls who had found each other across the vastness of space simply enjoyed being together. Years later, when other species asked how humanity had earned the trust of the most feared predators in the galaxy, the answer was always the same. It started with a dying cub who had forgotten how to eat, and a human woman who sat beside her and showed her the way. Not through force, not through technology, not through weapons or threats or political maneuvering. Through patience, through kindness, through the simple act of sharing a meal. Hana had become packed to a predator, and in doing so, she had changed the course of history. Because that is what humans do. They find the scared, the lonely, the broken. They sit down beside them. They share their food and their warmth and their love. And they remind them that no one has to be alone. They had conquered 12 star systems through strength and terror, but they bowed to a single human woman who had conquered something far more difficult. She had conquered fear itself. And she had done it with nothing but love.